Hello, my name is Theodore Beaulieu, and I am the writer of The River. Um, the River is basically about two vigilante killers by the name of Slick and Benjamin, or Slick Skateblade, and Benjamin Slickblade. And these are two protagonists that are based in the Deep South, Southern and Northern Carolina, in 1921. And they basically go around. They're hired guns or hired switchblades. they're hired killers for very, very wealthy people, and they lead incredibly lavish lifestyles. Slick is married to a young woman by the name of Kelly. Her last name is Kelly. Her first name is Kelly. It's the oddest thing. I don't know how that happened. But these two men, they go around killing. But what happened basically is that I believe, going around the Deep South and of course up north on different assignments, on different contracts, the men started hearing rumblings of land grabbing from huge northern corporations. I mean, northern corporations. 6 actually in particular that you actually find out in book 2 that are going around gobbling up land in Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and in Louisiana, large parts of Louisiana. They're landlogging the land, taking all the water out of it, and then but what's worst of all is that they're strong arming the people that actually own the land. We're talking about people. Black people, poor white people, Cajuns, Creoles, people that have worked hard to buy this land, that have saved for generations to buy, a good parcel of land to pass on to their family members. And these huge corporations, they are intimidating these poor people, either by death, by force, by violence. And the boys, they've known that this is going on, but being the type of men that they are, they're basically like, what, this is not our problem, this is not our issue, we're not going to deal with it. I think in book 1 you're going to find out they kind of stayed detached from it until one case came up, and then they're like, we really got to do something, because if we are worth the salt in our bread, and we are who we are, and we say we care about people, and we go about, defending the lambs of the world from the wolves, we got to do something about this. And that's exactly what they do. I love The River because it's a book. The main mystery is about this land grabbing and who's doing it and who's behind it. But there's so many different stories and so many different wonderful characters that lead off into other stories, into other different lives. You have Slick and you have Snyder and Shirley, wealthy, uber wealthy brother and sister situation. Whereas, they have their own scenario that they're dealing with, and mind you, they're also part of the land grabbing case. Then, of course, you have Kelly and Sally. Sally is Kelly's assistant, spirit sisters. And, of course, they go off on their own adventure throughout the book. Then, of course, you have Benjamin and Slick. And they, of course, are trying to solve everything. So The River, to me, is the telling of several different tales, but they all coincide and go along the same route of trying to understand who is stealing this land from these people, why they're stealing this land. And there's so much more than meets the eye concerning the book, and that's what I really love about it. How did The River come about? That's easy. The River came about with me being a hard-headed ass little boy who kept asking questions of my elders, and them kept basically saying, shut the hell up and stop asking all those questions. No, The River came about when I was I remember as early as 10 years old. Listen, before 10 years old, I was always, since I can remember, I was always, in my family, okay, let's start from point one. My family is huge. We have African Americans. We have Creoles, which is a version of African American, just add cream. And then we have Native Americans, which is a whole different animal unto itself, you know. And we're just a huge. And then we, of course, then we have European French Creole, which is part of the lineage that's way, way, way basically white folks. And then and then we have Cajun. That's part of the French Creole lineage, the white folks, but they act more like black folks. So we just say that they're black folks and white folks' skin. So that's my family. So it's a huge family, and it's a rainbow family, and that's where I come from. So asking everyone around about the age of 10 all these questions. Who are these men? And I found these men. I'll never forget. I was, I think it was a Christmas function. I was just sitting there, and I was going through a photo album. And my nana at the time, God bless her, Aunt Jet, she said, "Look here, you have that photo album. Take care of it because it's old, and your little grubber hands. I'ma whip your ass if you tear them pictures because it's the only ones we got." So me being a kid, I'm just flipping open it. It was so old. I remember the photo album. It was a leather bound. It was old, and you had to be very delicate with it. And out of all these wonderful photos of all these people of color, there was only one photograph, and it was in the near back of a group of white men, and that was odd, cause there was no other. But mind you, there were white people all over the place, but they were poor white people, and you could tell that part of our family. But these men, they were in suits, and they were finely dressed, and it was 5 of them, and 2 of them was standing by. One was shorter, one was taller, and 2 of them standing by each other. And I'm like, Aunt Jan, who is these 2 men right here? I knew something just told me to ask about those 2 men in particular. Boy, when I asked my Aunt Jet that, boy, you don't need to know all that. Why you want to know? And that was her only comment. So my hard-headed behind, that started me on a mission. So I started asking everybody. In fact, my aunt, she made a Xerox copy of the photograph for me inside her office. So that Christmas, I left with a Xerox copy of that photograph. And for years, I just went around asking everyone, who is these 2 men? And slowly but surely, the story of Benjamin and Slick came out and came to be. Two really, to me, really, really, really incredible characters. Most definitely. Is the river based on factual events? That, you know what? That I can't tell you. I'm pretty... Folklore by nature and by definition is usually they're shades of truth, but it's usually dramatized, and that's what makes folks. It's dramatized stories told by word of mouth. Very rarely are they ever written down, and as they're shared from person to person or from lineage to lineage or from generation to generation. Of course, there are different aspects that are added. Some are taken away, making it even more colorful depending on that generation and depending on that person's experience in the world. But I will say this, though, in all honesty. When I started my journey, very young, asking about the river and asking about Benjamin and Slick, the visceral reaction that I got from people, and it was not good. The reaction I got from people, I knew, even as a young kid, I knew that these men had did something bad. I knew that these were people that my family were afraid of. They were afraid to associate with them. They didn't want to talk about. They didn't want to talk about them. They didn't want me to even know about them. And I'm like, wow. The stories that I've heard, when the Ku Klux Klan, there's one story in particular. The Ku Klux Klan, the chapter in Louisiana, went to this family and had threatened them, was continuously threatening them, continuously. And mind you, Aunt Jet told me this story, and she told me this story a few years before she passed away. But this was one of the only complete stories that any of my elders have ever told me. She said, and I quote, They had been terrorizing these people forever and ever and ever. And she said Slick got hold of it. And that white nigga, he got hold of it. And he told his brother. And them boys, they went down to Nola. And they put their foot up all up in them Clux's asses. They did it. And then they left. And nobody ever found them. And I'm like, Nana, that nobody found them. She said, no, them boys, they knew how to hightail it out of town. She said, baby, they would do what they had to do, and they would fly to roost. They would leave immediately. And so, hearing that story and hearing a few more, just colorful stories, I began to put together a picture or put together a story and a timeline that I can't say that the river is based on factual events. Book 1 and book 2, it's historical fiction, which means that it's dramatized fiction, of course, respectfully. But the reaction that I've gotten from people, I would go as far as saying that the literary Ben and Slick, yeah, that's pretty spot on, because my family did not want to talk about them at all. Listen, I got the reactions. The reactions were always visceral. My granddaddy, one time I remember my granddaddy was literally going to whip my tail if I didn't stop talking about him. I literally had to get up, go near the screen door, because I was about to run out, and he sure the hell couldn't catch me. And I said, listen, I want to talk to you about these characters. And even then, I had my little notebook and my number 2 pencil. I want to talk about these characters. I want to talk about them. Now, Daddy, I want to talk about them. Boy, if you... I went to A. Gino's house because I couldn't go back. He was going to get me. But are they based on factual events? No. That's not the nature of folklore. It's historical fiction. It's shaded with color and pride and love. But it's still a really great story. Most definitely indeed. What is folklore? Folklore by definition is they're usually stories told by word of mouth, usually created by people that did not have the means to write or even have the means to read. But they're usually stories passed down from generation to generation to teach lessons, to teach about life, to tell family history, so that no one forgets. And the South is choke full of folklore. One of the reasons why I love the Dirty South, or the Deep South, as I affectionately call it. My home is full of folklore. It seemed, especially in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, everywhere you turn, if you come upon an elder that's older than 80, and you coax them like I do, with a cup of coffee and some tea cakes or some pastries or something sweet, and you have your little pen and notebook in hand, and you talk with them and you sit down with them and you have them understand that I want to listen to what you have to say. What you have to say is incredibly valuable to me. Please tell me. Please talk to me. And the stories is so incredible. I could write several volumes. Now, the folklore in the river is based on my family folklore, but folklore that I've heard from other elders, from other families, I could write several books based on these incredible stories of survival, of determination, of endurance, of love, love lost, love won, love found, just incredible stories. And that's what folklore, by definition. Folklore is the telling of stories in families or by groups of people that have, people that are together, that are part of a demographic or a population. So that is what folklore is. Whom inspires your writing style? Whom inspires my writing style? That's pretty easy. Really, really easy, actually. There are 3 writers that have really inspired me as a writer and as an artist that uses words like paint. for my, for my art, my particular art. The first, of course, is Zora Neale Hurston, an incredible writer, and an incredible writer of folklore. I remember when I was 10 years old, around about the time I started doing the research concerning Slick and Benjamin with my families during the summer, on summer vacation. It was recommended reading for Their Eyes Were Watching God was recommended reading for my class at that time. At that time in primary school, I had a gay librarian. His name was Mr. Hamill. And Mr. Hamill loved me because I had 3,001 questions and always one more question after that. And I always seemed to amuse him. He always found me amusing. And I remember one time he told me, he said, "You have a lot of questions. Do you have anyone to talk to at home?" I'm like, "Yes, I do. I'm just naturally inquisitive." Actually, it's not inquisitive, just being nosy. I've always been nosy, and probably will be to the very last breath of my body. But I really feel that he was amused by me. So I told him, I don't think I went into it, but I told him that I was researching family history, and I had found out about two family members in the 1920s. So he at first he recommended Their Eyes Were Watching God. Then he talked to my teacher, and back then in primary school we had one classroom for all classes. Kids didn't go from class to class to class. We had one classroom and it taught all subjects. And yes, that's how old I am. But we had one classroom that taught all subjects. And I'll never forget Miss Williams. Miss Williams was a mean teacher. I didn't like her because she thought I was too nosy. And she didn't like all my questions. But when I read Their Eyes Were Watching God, the story of Benjamin and Slick came together beautifully. And it gave me a framework to paint this story in. It gave me the energy, especially the dialogue, the natural Southern anthropological dialogue that Zora Neale Hurston was famous for. Mind you, she was sandblasted by, during her time, by the bourgeoisie African-American reading population, because they felt that it wasn't progressive. They felt that she was, if they felt it was ignorant, that they wanted to get away from that type of dialect. They thought that dialect was very ignorant. And you still have segments of the black population. You still have segments of the population, period, that feel that the dialogue, the anthropological dialogue that I use concerning Benjamin and Slick is quote-unquote ignorant. But I had to tell the truth because that's how the boys sound in my head. That's how they talk. And I can't go about telling their story, painting it. Let's put it this way. If the boys give me their story in a beautiful shade of purple, I can't go about painting that story in a shade of blue or a shade of red. I have to go about the way that they tell me their story. And the more honest I am, I believe the more they trust me with their story, and the more fluid the communication becomes. So, but I will say this: them boys, they have that thick Louisiana tongue. Sometimes Benjamin and Slick come into my head, and I'm like, please slow down, because I don't understand what the hell y'all talking about. I don't understand it. But that's who inspires my writing style most definitely. What or whom inspired your creation of the boys, the two main protagonists? That's pretty. Actually, I would say that that's easy, but it's not. It was a long process. It took a long time. I like to tell people that The River was a story that was writing itself for over 95 years. And I was crazy enough to pick it up and to listen to that energy, to listen to those stories, and to really want to do something with this. No one in my family, by the way, I'm the only writer in my family. I'm the only storyteller. I mean, there are tons of storytellers. I wouldn't say tons, but many of my elders are storytellers, but I'm the only one. I'm the only written storyteller in my family. And I'm the only one that bothered to take all those stories, take that folklore, specifically about Benjamin and Slick, and put it into a book. But who inspired me about the boys? Benjamin, aka Skeeter. He was easy, pretty easy. When I was doing my research, even as a young boy, I always envisioned him. I always saw his face. I always heard a little bit of his voice, even when I was taking notes as a kid. When I would go over my notes, I would pretend to hear his voice in my head, and then over time, when I was writing other books, when I would sit down over a break or during a holiday, I would always go back to that story, and in kind of a really odd way, I would always wonder what Benjamin is doing, like what Benjamin's doing right now. So I was writing 3014, which is an 8-book series, and all throughout that time, something happened, and I just knew. I can't tell you in particular what happened, but I just knew that it was time to write the river. So on book 8 of 3014 AD, I made the promise to myself that, and I also made the promise to Benjamin that I'm like, you know what, dude? After this book, I'm gonna start on the river. I promise, and I'm very glad that I did. Benjamin has always been there for me, always. His voice has always been clear. That really thick Louisiana accent has always been clear. His brother, his half brother, the Cajun, Slick, was a whole different story. Everybody in my family knew a lot about Benjamin, the Creole. They didn't know much about his brother. And what they did know, it was always shaded in mystery or in lies. Really even as a kid, I knew they were lies. And so his voice wasn't there. Even as a kid, I could never hear his voice. So when I started to write The River, I couldn't find his voice. I couldn't find who he was. So I really started to give up, and I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to have to write The River with just Skeeter, with just Benjamin. And I knew that would be wrong. The River probably would have been a short story, if that, or it probably would have just been a 50-page manuscript that I would have thrown away. But that is until I discovered a character on Leverage called Elliot Spencer. Never forget this. I was with my adopted mother, and we were watching Leverage, The Big Bang Job. And Elliot was telling Parker, he had just come from this big meeting with this big, bad guy. And he was telling Parker, and Parker asked him about his history, and the actor, whose name, by the way, is Christian Kane, the wonderful, multi-talented Christian Kane, he told Parker, he said, you know what, you don't want to know my past. And if I tell you, you're not going to want to hear it. And that, he was in that moment, and I cried, because I found Slick, and I've never looked back. And that's who Slick is. Slick is actually Elliot, but set in the 1920s. He's bloodier, he's loving, he's sexy, he's awesome, he's beautiful, much more volatile than actually Elliot, believe it or not. But yeah, that is whom inspires the protagonist of my book. How is it living with such dynamic characters? It is daily. It is, it's funny. It's an adventure. I'm now in book 2. The book that'll be coming out, I believe it's going to be out come wintertime in 2016. Blood and Water, The River, Volume 2, Blood and Water. It's fun. It can be trying at times. But not really, because as a writer, I can't speak for most writers. I can only speak for myself. I live a lot inside my head, and I do a lot of writing and a lot of studying and a lot of research for these characters and for the time period that they're in. So on my downtime, when I'm having a glass of wine and I'm listening to good music, there are times, there are quite a few times, whereas either Benjamin or Slick will interrupt that downtime. And everywhere I go, I always have something to where I can dictate notes. Those guys, they'll always interrupt, and Slick and both, in their thick Louisiana tongue, They're going to tell they always tell me what's going on, new aspects of the story, new ways to look at things, where they want to go, how they want to explore, people they want to meet. I would say out of the two, Benjamin is smooth. He's a smooth operator. Same thick tongue. Neither one of the boys went to school to formal. Neither one of them have a formal education, but both are extremely articulate and very, very intelligent. But Benjamin is smooth, and he expresses himself in a really smooth way, a way that's almost, I would say, almost seductive. If he wants to get a point across to me that I really don't necessarily agree with, I'll always see the point like expressed to me in a different way, and I'm like, oh, okay, I understand that. Slick, on the other hand, now mind you, this is so funny, because Slick is inspired by Elliot Spencer from Leverage, and of course, that in tune inspired by the wonderful Christian Kane. I always hear his voice in a southern. Think of Elliot's voice in that southern, deep, grovel, wonderful accent, but thick. And for all the Caniacs out there, and I include myself in this wonderful movement, yeah, Caniacs, I have Chris in my head all the time. Yeah. Aren't you guys jealous? With Slick, he's a lot more forceful. He has a lot of bravado, and he talks fast, and he's fast. He's like this, but bam, but bam, but bam, and I'm like, dude, slow down. And a lot of times he's very inappropriate. I'm like, dude, I can't write that. I can't say that. That people will throw this book out the window. They will burn it. Librarians will say, we will not have that book in our school. They're probably already saying that, but they're like, no, we will not be reading this book. People will not put it on their book clubs. Nothing. I'm like, no, you're going to have to reword that in a different way. So he always comes back to me with the same ideas, just like Benjamin, but in a different way. But I would say Slick is he's more hot-headed. His energy is more heated. He's very, very, very quick-tempered. I told an interviewer a while ago, I said, please, if I would ever meet these men as they are inside my head in person, Slick would be the one that I really wouldn't talk to per se. I would just nod my head in agreement. Yes, Slick, yes, I agree. Because I would not want to upset him. Because he feels like the type, whereas he gets angry very quickly. But yet these men, they are incredibly loving. They're very, very kind. As energies and as characters, they're incredibly patient, incredibly funny. The anecdotes that I hear all the time. There's sometimes I'm just by myself and I'm chuckling, and I'm pretty sure my cat thinks I'm nuts. But both of them are funny. So writing about both of them together, it's having them in my life. It's really, really beautiful. It's really, really amazing. Most definitely. Where do I see the river in 10 years? In all honesty, oh wow, 10 years. It's 2016 now. It would be, let's not even go there. What, 2016, 2026, maybe? No? So, 17. I can't count. 18, 19, 20, 23, 24, 25, 26. So it'd be 2026. Where do I see? Yes, I had to count on my fingers. I'm an artist. Most of us are not good at math. 2026. That's really far off. If I was a fairy, and I had copious amounts of glitter dust that could change the whole entire world, the first thing that I would do, other than, this book, I would bring world peace to everybody. I would make sure that everyone had tons of love and life, and I would just make sure that this earth, it was a wonderful place for our children to live. First and foremost. Now, going back to the book, where do I see the river in 10 years? If I had that type of control, I would love to see the river as a series, maybe on Netflix, maybe on HBO, which other? Showtime. I wouldn't necessarily want to see it as a movie, and the reason why is because movies are very volatile if they don't bring in the box office receipts. And keep in mind, this is a series. If the first one doesn't bring in the box office receipts, then the second one is not going to get made. And I want all of them to be told as a story. And the really great thing about television series is that all 7 books, if 7, 8, 9, 10 books, how many ever that how many that they're going to be made, most of the story can be told in its entirety with season 1. Well, actually, with a whole season is usually what, 10 to 20 episodes, and in 20 episodes, we can tell a lot concerning the boys and the girls and the brotherhood. Join the brotherhood. Yes, there's a lot we can tell. That there's so many places we can go. And these boys, I want to take them not only to the United States, I want them to go to Europe, I want them to go to Africa, I want them to go to South America. Oh, these boys, they're going to be all over the world. This is going to be a global movement. And I want the time spans and not to travel over not only from the 20s, but I want it to go into the 30s. I think I'm gonna stop the books probably around about 1935, 36, 37. Maybe, who knows? I may not even do that. But by that time, because Ben and Slick, they're in their 20s, late 20s. So they'll be in their 30s. And I'm thinking that these boys will probably want to retire around about 50 or 52. If that. I know Slick is not going to want to do that. But Benjamin is probably going to want to settle down. But I want to take them all over the world. And these are literary characters. So there's so much room to fluff. But in 10 years, I would love to see the books translated into several different languages across the world. In 10 years, I would love to have a larger audience. And I would hope that that audience would be able to enjoy seeing the boys in real life. And I would like to also go on record, and a lot of Caniacs know this, and a lot of Christian Kane fans know this. Hi, Valerie, and hi, Beth, and hi, all of you. A lot of you know this. I have went on record stating that if this project ever gets greenlighted, I would only want Christian Kane playing Slick, and I would only want Daniel Sanjata to play Benjamin. But I'm much more. I would want those 2 guys to play those characters. That's it. End of discussion. Without them, there'd be no project. Especially with Slick, because Slick has a certain energy, and only Christian with his talent can capture that energy. I'm a big movie buff, huge movie buff. I've never seen anybody who could capture that energy so effectively, so beautifully, and be in that moment. So that's where, hopefully in the next 10 years, the river will be. Most definitely. Is the river political? I'm starting to get that question a lot now from different, because we're now starting to go around and get online interviews and interviews from reviewers and people who've been sent pre-review copies. And that question always seems to come up in the questionnaire. And the first few times I kind of vetoed it. I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. But I'm now starting to, especially concerning the landscape that we're living in, specifically in America, I think that it does need to get talked about, at least touched on. Is the river political? No. I am an entertainer. I am a writer. My job is to basically entertain you. My job is to take you from the humdrum of your life and give you a voice and to send you into this world, to give you rich characters, incredible scenery, to take you on a journey. My job is not, and I repeat, my job is not to try to infiltrate your life with my political views. I think that is selfish. I think that it's corrosive. I think that it's wrong, and that's not my job. I'm not a politician. I am just a writer. But does the river touch on political subjects? It depends on how you view political. Lynching of black people, the mistreatment of black people as well as other people of color in the 1920s, the segregation, the mistreatment of American citizens. If speaking about those truths, if that makes me political, if that makes the book political, then yes, it is political. But in all honesty, I'm just being honest. That's what happened. It is what happened, you know? And I'm also starting to get kind of a little feedback to whereas, why can't we move away from this? Why can't we move away from, from those days? And, I'm basically just going to give you an old adage that my nana used to say. You can't put perfume on shit and not expect for it not smell like shit. It just smells like shit and perfume. It still smells bad. We need to heal as a nation, and I feel that we are moving forward in healing as a nation. In all honesty, there's still a lot of things where there's still a lot we need to do, but I think we are making strides, most definitely. But is the river political? When I write about these really touchy subjects, I'm always incredibly honest. But there's a certain way that you can write about a lynching of a man, or that you can write about one of the characters who's been mistreated by white men, by the Klan. I always make sure that I don't write pointing the finger. I almost feel as if I'm just dictating what's out of their mouth, what comes from them. I don't write the book pointing the finger. What I do is that I write the book making sure that I tell a narrative and a story that is truth. And there's nothing political about that. That's just pure storytelling. So is the river political? It can be. But it depends on how you see it. It depends on your frame of mind, on your perspective. But is it written to be political? As my grandfather would say, hail to the now. No to the hail. No, it is not written to be political. It is written to tell a story during a very turbulent time for Americans. And with two individuals that decided to say, you know what, enough of this bullshit. Let's do something about it. And what they did, many may not agree with, but they did what they felt needed to be done. And I can honestly say I appreciate them for that. I appreciate their need to make change in whichever way that they thought that they could. So yes, there you go.